Good morning. Thank you. I'm speaking in the name of Instituto Verificador de Comunicação. We are together in this and not for the IFABC. But what is the IFABC? It's an international federation of companies like ours that do audit across the globe. So we have about 30 countries where we have a ABC, so it's the International Federation. And what do? We are a tripartite organization, so we have in our board advertisers, agencies, and media. And what we do is that we verify the data and the publishers to assure that it's a safe or it's a reliable environment for marketeers to invest their money. We're going to talk about fraud. So those are estimates about what the fraud is, what are the levels. That's a very tough number to measure because it's hard to disclose, and also who has been frauded is not willing to share all the details. We're not happy, and because of this measurement being so fuzzy, it's hard to track progress to see if it's improving or if it's decreasing. What we know is that there are things that have been done to reduce the amount of fraud. Although fraud is stealing money, so if you lock one door, another one is going to be found. And what we think is happening, and I think there is progress, there is evolution. The big question, since we cannot measure exactly the evolution or the amount of money that is being frauded to see if it's growing or decreasing. But there is happening evolution because I think the industry is approaching this with different solutions to do different things. And one example is the ads TXT, which is helping solve a lot of the spoofing problem. That's one of the problems that is kind of going away. But fraud is not going away. And there are other solutions, and that's what we are going to talk more about with Tom.
Thank you, Pedro. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tom. Ivor, someone might have to hold you down because I'm going to introduce some new terminology that no one quite agrees on. So don't want you rushing the stage and tackling me or anything like that. Although that would be memorable if that happened, I think. So the ANA White Ops study just came out, the 2018-2019 fraud study. And one of the interesting facts that came out in it was that nearly, or less than half of all impressions are fully transparently validatable. Okay, say that 3 times. The fully transparently validatable was not defined in the study, but I've just put up the top, the highest validatable ad impression types. And the highest was 60, 52, 51, and the other ones were below that. So what does this mean? Well, what it means is the best measurement companies in the world doing their best job are only able to, score an impression as valid or invalid with a high degree of confidence. Can only do that with less than 50% of the impressions. So that's an important kind of, we know this. We see this in the auditing that we do. We look at the accredited reports and we can match that up to other data that we have. So this is true. We see this in our auditing, but I think it's an important fact because it speaks to the fact that we're not really doing enough yet just in tackling the fraud problem. We call this something very different in our world internally, so I'm going to introduce another concept here. We call it undetected invalid traffic. So if you take the full 100% of the pie of traffic on a publisher site, there's 3 types of traffic. There's valid traffic, okay, what we think are humans. There's detected invalid traffic, so that's what we detect as invalid. And then there's all this undetected invalid traffic. So we look at the whole pie, and that's what we do as digital in digital audits. But this type of traffic allows three different types of sites to persist. The fake site where there's either little or no content that really anybody wants to read and is highly has a lot of fraudulent traffic. Legitimate sites that might be sourcing traffic. Yesterday, Shalan talked about go do a Google and search on buy internet traffic, and you'll find hundreds of vendors out there that will sell you traffic that will allow it to go through our measurement systems. And then the third are legitimate publishers with good practices. And what this is an industry problem. It's not anybody's fault. It just means that we need to do more. We need to attack the problem in a different way. What this undetected invalid traffic in this situation, the consequences are that it skews the measurements. The measurements are going to be off. It allows for unauthorized sellers and resellers, which allows spoofing, publishers to be spoofed and marketers' dollars to go to waste. And there's really no common way to tell who a good publisher is from another, the bad guys. Here's a kind of a mental framework that we use. I just thought it might be helpful because I think, how do you, if the elephant is ad fraud, how do you eat the elephant? You can eat it one bite at a time, or you can have a lot of different people eating one bite at a time, and that's what we have. We've got different people in here. And I'm not representing everybody here that is working on this problem, but at a very high level, you've got ad metrics that we need to have verified, and we need to continue to raise the bar, and I know MRC continues to do that. And that's kind of their area. We've got ads.txt and a couple of other initiatives from IAB Tech Lab that are coming down the pipe that actually help us validate that a seller can sell advertising for a publisher. So, verification of the seller. Then you need to make sure that the inventory actually is coming from that publisher. And then you got to verify that the publisher traffic is valid. So we do that last thing. We verify the publisher traffic, and I'll just dig into that a little bit. How do you know, how do you get assurance that the publisher, well, you have to validate that the business is legitimate first. It's a legitimate publisher with good practices. And we do that through a business process review. We go through 60 different points with publishers to look at their tech stack, their practices, their controls, their policies, that sort of thing. And then you have to validate the site level traffic continuously. So we do that, got to monitor it all and monitor it continuously. So we do that. We do a 14-point, different analyses on that data that, frankly, you can only do. The publisher only has access to this data, and then us. This is something that a marketer can't have access to that data through the technology that you're using. So this gives it an independent third party. We're not-for-profit companies, and we do an independent third party analysis and then distribute that efficiently to the market. This fits in line with what's happening with a lot of large. You've seen all of these companies in the news, and Chase's whitelisting, Unilever's move towards trusted publisher networks, and Diageo's move towards a trusted marketplace. All little, different names for essentially the same thing, taking back control and making sure that they're advertising with quality publishers. The hard work that goes into these programs behind the scene, we can make that easier by, certifying publishers, and then they'll know that all this analysis has been done and publishers have been audited. So I'll turn it back over to you, Pedro.
Thank you, Tom. I think what next? Okay, this fight is not going away. We think fraud, where there's money, there's going to be fraud possibilities. And what we think is important is to broaden the platforms or the methods or the things that we can do to address this problem into different OTT, other stuff happening. And I think another important point that I wanted to close the presentation is that since we are part of IFABC, we have a good connection with the different ABCs across the world. And we do a lot in terms of sharing information, sharing methods, and even cooperating. In the case of Brazil and US, we have exactly the same tool available for marketeers in Brazil and US, which I think is something that can be expanded to other places for sure. But that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Next up, we have Valerie Morrison.